Welcome to the Ranking Revolution podcast, your go-to source for strategies and ideas for SEO, organic growth, content creation, and online business. I'm Doug Cunnington, your host. In this episode, I'll tell you my thoughts on hiring. They work for me, but they may not work for everyone. So take the good stuff that you like and make it your own. You'll probably disagree with some points, which is totally fine. So you could just disregard those, but don't throw out everything because I'm sure you'll be able to get some good ideas. I'm going to go over my approach for a lean team. I'm going to talk about using trial jobs over interviewing, and I will give you some tips on these trial jobs. I'll briefly mention hiring in stages. I'll let you know about some common pitfalls and mistakes that people make when they hire, especially early on, and where to find people. And one of them is kind of unexpected, and I actually didn't even think of it myself until it happened to me. So I'll let you know what that is. It sounds mysterious the way I just described it. So quick note, I'm thinking of smaller teams here, so even solopreneurs, or if your team is currently under, say, like 4 or 5 people. However, you can still use these ideas and tips to help your managers learn. So if you already have a bigger team, if you have 10 or 12 or 20 people, and you're doing all the HR stuff, you can actually train your team to hire and take on some of the HR work and get that off your plate. And if you're an entrepreneur that likes to work online, and maybe you identify with some of my background and the way I like to approach online business, you actually don't like the HR work very much. You probably focus on some of the more technical aspects, and the HR part kind of sucks. And as your business grows, then you end up doing more HR stuff instead of the core business. So if you could train your team to do some of the HR work and hire people, then you have more free time. Before we get to the meat of the episode, please make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you're consuming this. And if you like it, please leave a review. It really helps out to spread the word. And basically, if I run across a podcast, I'll take a quick look at the reviews to see if I'm interested or not. And it looks good to have more stars in your review. So anyway, I appreciate that. Second quick note, this is a reminder to myself. The last solo episode that I did, I was like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna actually, write a little bit more. And it ended up being way, way longer than I intended, like 30 minutes. I want these smaller episodes to be actually smaller and be around 10 minutes or so. Sometimes they're shorter, but I really want them to be tight. So I'll stop rambling now and stick to the fucking point. Okay, my lean team approach. I have a small team and I like it that way. Currently, I have 2 virtual assistants and they just do a few things for me. Overall, it's less stress and it keeps the costs low. I can be flexible and grow fast if I need to, though I'm not in a stage where I'm trying to grow the team or anything like that. And I can actually grow fast because I have training and job aids in very good shape. They've been iterated upon and I know they could stand alone. So if I needed to hire a team of writers, I could probably hire 5 or 6 writers within like 2 weeks or so and have a pretty good team within just a few hours of, posting a job, working through some of the applicants that come through. So once you have things in good shape, you can grow really fast. I can also hire for specialized skills. So let's say I need some work done for my website, which is WordPress. I can hire a developer that specializes in whatever I need, whether it's like site speed, or maybe I want to get rid of a few plugins and sort of consolidate that code in sort of my core install. I can do that. I can just hire someone that does that. Of course, the obvious issue with a small team, you literally can't do as much work. So if you're growing and you're thinking of scaling and you actually need a bigger team to do all the work, you should check out episode 29 about scaling and growing your team. This is where I actually talk about growing your team pretty big. Hiring also means that you will have to let go of some of the work. So for all the control freaks out there, you'll need to let go of the control. So you won't have the same amount of oversight and control over the work, at least not in the same way. So it might be an issue for your business if your deliverables need you specifically to do the work. That said, it may not be the best business model if you are the one doing everything all the time and it solely relies on you to do the work. But overall, letting go is a good thing most of the time, and you may have a chance to grow the business and earn more if you're able to delegate some of the work. The second main area, and maybe the biggest point of this episode, is the trial jobs, which I prefer over a long interviewing process. And I definitely favor hiring for trial jobs, which are paid, by the way. So that's sort of fair for everyone. And it lets the freelancer or potential full-time employee know that you value their work. You're not trying to get free work from them. And interviewing is a problem because some people are really good at interviewing, but they're actually bad at their job. Just quick example, quick tangent. Back in the day, I don't think I was a very good interviewee, especially right out of college. But now that I've been podcasting for several years and creating content and refining and getting better at my communication skills and storytelling, I'm pretty sure I should be able to interview much better now than I used to. That doesn't mean I'm good at my job, by the way. I don't want to set any weird expectations out there, but basically someone would probably find me to be a qualified candidate for a lot more things because I could tell a story and really lock in for the questions that they're asking and then answer their question and get to the point where in the past, maybe I didn't have confidence, maybe my stories rambled, maybe I didn't do a good job just overall in the interview process. That said, I did come from a corporate background and did help grow a specific team from I think we had about 15 in the beginning to over about 100 full-time employees. And I handled a huge load of the screening, looking through the resumes, interviewing, training, and onboarding. So big time suck for the interviewing process. And quick note, Automatic, the parent company of WordPress, hires with trial jobs. At least I'm pretty sure I heard that on the Tim Ferriss podcast with Matt Mullenweg. And he's been on the show a few times, but I think they hire for a few trial jobs. That way they really understand how the person can work within the teams at WordPress. So a couple pros and cons of the long interviewing process. So pros are you actually have a comprehensive candidate assessment. So you're looking through a bunch of resumes, you get to ask a bunch of questions. There's probably multiple interviews, so you can interview your candidates and then whittle it down and go a little bit deeper. And you can kind of understand the cultural fit of the potential teammate because you're spending more time just chatting and understanding the communication style. The cons are it's time consuming, it costs a lot of money, and depending on who you're interviewing, you can kind of get interview fatigue, both you specifically and the people that you're working with. The other thing is if you have interviewed for jobs in the past and you've been strung along and you've done 2 to 5 interviews, you spent all this time and you thought you had a really good connection and then boom, it's gone. It's kind of sad. I mean, you can't, as a hiring manager, you can't think of everyone that might get their feelings hurt because that would be devastating. But basically, you can actually get some fatigue of interviewing all the folks. There's some huge advantages for using trial jobs. Number one, you don't rely on someone's storytelling ability or their interviewing skills. You actually rely on their real world skills and actually what they can deliver. And because of that, when you hire someone for a trial job, then you know if they can actually do that job. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. You can do this much faster as well. And because you're able to hire and get some work, a small project done, you can hire a few people at the same time and get them to do different jobs, but then you have a head-to-head comparison. The other thing is you really reduce the risk of a hiring mistake. Now, if you're just hiring for a freelance job, it may not be as big of a deal, But you could take these ideas to hire full-time employees as well. And that can be expensive. So if you're hiring someone full-time, there's a lot more invested, and it's extremely expensive if you hire the wrong person and you have to go through this process. But if you're just hiring for a trial job, you could actually get a few people working in parallel, and maybe you find that two of them are great and you're going to hire more people because they're doing such a great job. Some of the issues with the trial jobs is it can be a little bit difficult to manage if you are hiring a few people at the same time. So you don't have to hire them in parallel, but you can if you want to. It makes it a little bit easier too if you hire them in parallel, because then you have the work done all at the same time and you're not stringing someone along. They're probably looking for other jobs out there as well. Couple key things for best practices around trial jobs. So you want this to go pretty smoothly. So number one, fair compensation. You have to figure out what the fair compensation is for your role and what works for your cash flow and bottom line. And of course, the geography of where the person is working. Sometimes with geo arbitrage, you really can take advantage of that and pay a very good salary for that person, but it's actually pretty economical for you. So keep all that stuff in mind. So fair compensation is big, and there might be some negotiation, but overall, like if you pay something fair, they're going to be happy with it. You'll be happy with it. Second big thing, have very clear objectives and very clear deliverables. And hopefully you have this clear, and you should make sure they understand exactly what the deliverables are. If you have an example, that's one of the best ways, or multiple examples. It's very easy to see what you need if they can see an example. And then finally, if you are hiring multiple people, you definitely need effective evaluation criteria. So figure out if you need sort of a checklist, if you need some sort of a scoring system, and there should be multiple categories on this evaluation. And it should be very easy to compare the different people that you're hiring. So it's very easy to understand who should be hired. And you could just create a spreadsheet with a few tabs, and then you're able to do that pretty easily. There are some sort of softer skills which we'll get into, and that may be something that's not obvious for you to evaluate, but it's very important. Let's get into the pitfalls and how to avoid them. So here's some things to avoid. You are going to assume that you're going to find the right person right away. That might not be the case. In fact, I think it's probably a good idea to assume about a 25% success rate. So if you want to hire one person, you might need to go through like 4 trial jobs in 4 separate people to find the right one. It could be much worse than that. It could be much better than that. But just assume there's some waste in the system and you're not going to find the right person on the first try. It does happen, but it's rare. Number 2 is overlooking the importance of, in air quotes, like soft skills. So in my case, I think the communication style and someone being effective in the format that you need is one of the most important things. You could also change this around depending on the role. So if you need to hire an account manager, obviously their client relations and very specifically their soft skills as far as communicating are very, very important. If you're hiring a writer or a developer, their sort of soft skills don't matter as much. It might be mostly text-based, and then that's where the communication style and format is very important. The thing is, if you hire someone for a trial job, you're going to be able to see how that works. And they're probably going to have questions, which is normal, and you're going to have feedback for them, and they're going to have feedback for you potentially. So you can see how that communication goes, and that might be one of the most important things, because if you want to expand their role and give them more work as they get more skills, then you're going to need to give them a lot more feedback. You're going to need to get them to ask questions when things aren't clear and that sort of thing. The third area is to provide very clear job descriptions and job aids. And this is another area I went into more detail with episode 29, but essentially, if you can provide a job aid, that's great, but you really want to have a few people go through the job aid to ask questions so that you can improve and clarify areas that are confusing or generally not clear. When people ask questions, you can make sure that you include those answers to make any confusing areas as clear as possible. The last one here that we'll note, and there's obviously other mistakes and pitfalls, but one issue is you're not letting people go fast enough. So hire for the trial job. And if something goes weird and you're like, this is obviously not going to be a good fit, just let the people go as soon as possible. And if it doesn't work out like 75% of the time, like I mentioned, then it's okay. Like it's not going to work out for everyone and you just need to let them go. Don't think, hey, they're going to do better and better. Like find the right person and then keep moving forward. Or if the person clearly is not going to work out, just let them go. Say, hey, it doesn't look like it's a good fit. I'm really sorry. You've paid them for the job, so it's not like they were working for free, and you can move on with your life. Here's a couple just bullet points for avoiding those pitfalls. Number one, just define the communication style, the communication format as clearly as possible so they understand, hey, don't send me a million emails. We're working on WhatsApp, or we're working off of Trello, or we're working off of Basecamp or whatever. Just make it very clear, the communication channel, and that can include the frequency of communication from you to you, whatever you want. You're the boss, right? So you can define that however you want, but just make sure it's clear. Number two is balancing speed with the thoroughness of the whole hiring process. So of course we want to hire people and get them engaged and find the right person as soon as possible, but it does take time. So even if you are hiring people for trial jobs and you're hiring 4 at a time, you need to let them finish the work. You need to evaluate their work accordingly using the predefined criteria that you thought about ahead of time, and then pick the right person. So don't rush it. And third is actually crafting and creating detailed and accurate job postings. So these are the roles and responsibilities of the person that you want to hire. By the way, you don't necessarily want to give someone all the work, all the roles and responsibilities to do like on day one. I find it very effective to layer on the work so that someone doesn't get overwhelmed. I remember back in the day, one of my friends hired someone and was like, they sucked. I gave them a 5-page checklist and they did a bad job on it. I'm like, 5 pages, that's way too much. You just like sent them a list of stuff and they like probably didn't understand most of it. And you have to train them. You have to let them gain the skills in one area and then continue to layer it on. So just a quick note on hiring in stages. Let's say things are going great, or maybe you have outside investment and you have the ability to hire 50 people. If you try to hire 50 people in a very short time, you're going to run into all sorts of issues. There's a lot of management and communication, and there's even company culture when you're able to grow really fast. So I highly recommend hiring in stages. So even if you have the ability to hire 50 people, maybe you just hire 3 and then you hire 6 more and then you hire 6 more after that, and you slowly grow from there. You might be able to accelerate, but as soon as you start adding more people, the complexity just explodes. It's not intuitive how complicated things get when you start adding a lot of people. As we wrap it up, and I see I'm not sticking to the 10 minutes that I mentioned, but at least we're a little bit shorter than the 30 minutes. If you're starting from scratch, you can go to Upwork. That is a great place, a great marketplace. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of different kinds of freelancers that you could hire there. You could almost hire them on a full-time basis and still work through the platform. And as a hiring company, they have great protections for you. So you can pretty much rest assured that you're not going to get ripped off. If you have any issues, you're going to be able to go to Upwork and say, hey, I followed all the processes that I was supposed to. This person didn't deliver. I want a refund on this. And I've done this multiple times. I am pretty good with the details and I did all the stuff I was supposed to. Here's the sort of secret thing that you may not realize. If you have a network of other people with online businesses, these could be just peers, these could be friends, it could be folks you met at a networking event, a conference, whatever, or folks in your mastermind group, which is how, I was able to figure this out. But they might have people on their team that they need to let go for some reason. Maybe they're not growing anymore. Maybe their cash flow needs have changed. Maybe the roles have changed and they just don't need that person anymore. So let people know that you are looking for someone to hire. The other thing is, even if they don't have a person on their team that they could pass along, they know other people that work online and they're able to, pass that along to you. It's just the network effect here. So here's the really cool thing that happened. I hired someone that was in the hiring process with a friend that was in my mastermind group. He didn't hire the person. She actually finished number 2, but she went through the whole process, did trial jobs and everything. So he really did all the work. And basically I was able to hire her without really screening her. I think we hopped on a call for about 30 minutes and I was like, this is a good fit. I trust my friend in the mastermind group. And I hired her and she worked with me for, I think, about a year or so. And it worked out great. And in fact, I probably would have hired anyone who finished in the top 5. He was hiring someone full time. So he actually put in a little bit more time with the interview process. And he may have gone through sort of a placement service as well. So these are my thoughts on hiring freelancers, full-time employees, and generally growing your team. If you have any comments or questions or thoughts, you can shoot me an email or you could leave a comment over on the YouTube channel. The email is feedback@rankingrevolution.com. I'm Doug Cunnington, and I would love it if you checked out some of the other episodes. There's some solo ones like this, and there's some others that are interviews, usually 2-parters where we cover different topics, and those are typically 2 episodes. So I break it up, and most of these are around 20 to 40 minutes or so. So thanks a lot. We'll catch you on the next episode.